Welcome to episode 15 of the Eyes on Privacy podcast. This week we're joined by Keith Watson, and we have a new host, Josh Gillum, who I was on our previous podcast, I think maybe once in the past. And Mike is off doing what Mike does this week, and we're going to just throw Josh into the fire and have him introduce an article on his first show this week.
Today we're going to introduce, I guess, some car washes were being hacked and credit card data was being stolen. It was sort of interesting the way it was. A lot of them were running the same POS system or point of sale system, and then to do their remote management, I'm assuming, I guess it didn't say, but that's what I thought. They were using PC Anywhere to use that, and not only were they using PC Anywhere, they're using the default credentials, which ended up not being the way the hackers got into it. They were actually just running an old version of PC Anywhere and exploiting a vulnerability that PC Anywhere said, like, hey, don't use this version anymore, it is vulnerable, and obviously nobody listened on that front. So that was the first part of the equation. The second part is pretty interesting of how these people got caught. They were taking the data, the credit card data is what they were after, and putting it on used gift cards, so like recoding used gift cards to put the correct credit card data on there, so when they would swipe, it would have the stolen credit card information. And they would use these at some local convenience stores, and they would just sit there with card after card trying to buy more gift cards with these, and I guess they would sit there, swipe, decline, decline, decline. Oh, that one took, here's $500 worth of gift cards. Awesome. And it sounds like they did this 4 times a week at the same convenience stores in this certain town. And then, sort of interesting, one of the ways one of the guys got caught was he was stabbed during a different robbery that was going on and was at the hospital and was being interrogated by the police, and his pants were taken off to fix the stab wound, I believe. And so when they went to itemize his pants, they saw all these gift cards on there. It was part of the way that they found him, in addition to other information that was in the article. So that was just a brief overview of it. I thought it was pretty nuts. Very interesting that they kept going to the same location to buy their gift cards. What was your guys' thoughts on this?
Wow, what a great story! I mean, really, this is the criminal element at its finest, perhaps. So yeah, these crooks were rather brazen, I guess, in that they had a lot of information acquired from these POS systems, but they were trying to launder the money almost. Convert it from one form into another that allows them to basically hide the transactions, make it less likely they would be caught, which is an interesting way of doing it. However, when you go back to the same store every time and you try these cards over and over, that's kind of a red flag, especially when you go into stores with video cameras. They record you going there multiple times. Sooner or later, you're going to get caught for something like that. So, I thought it was pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that they were using basically a very old system with an old version of PC Anywhere, and the article mentioned an old version of Windows XP. I think they just mentioned that to kind of tell you how old the system was. But that I was just questioning whether that would even bring them into PCI compliance. I really don't know all of the regulations or rather standards behind PCI compliance, but I mean, it seems like in this case that if they weren't, then they could be held liable for the credit cards that were stolen from them, and they actually could see some negative impact to their bottom line due to this breach. So I'm wondering if that could happen to them, and they could, be liable for any damages caused.
Well, I think you're right, and I believe the rules say that if you fail to follow some of the PCI standards and there is a breach, some of the penalties could be also you're no longer allowed to process credit cards. So your car wash would be a cash-only business after that, because there would be no way to basically do any transactions with credit cards. That's one potential penalty. So if if your client base has used a lot of credit cards, yeah, that would be kind of devastating to your business.
It wasn't like it was just one car wash. I think they said it was over 40 car washes that they're hitting, so that would be a lot of businesses being affected by that.
Yeah, it would be, and I imagine that the other thing I believe about PCI compliance is they can be held liable. The business can be held liable for any fraud that was generated from the cards that got stolen from them, since they weren't compliant with the regulations.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And they can be sued.
They should have been audited or reviewed at some point, unless they fall into a different category of merchant. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any size limitations or anything on
I'll
business.
I'll have to ask our PCI compliance guy tomorrow. Maybe he'll have a better idea. But yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, there's a big question as to whether they were compliant to begin with, or.
Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like they were extremely the most intelligent of criminals, but then again, you'd think if you were intelligent, you wouldn't be doing this sort of a crime. You'd do something else to make your money. Josh pointed it out that they went to the same car wash and kept buying gift cards. They buy like a $500 gift card for the car wash, and then they'd drain the gift card, and then they'd reuse the card for its magnetic strip to encode the credit card data from that stolen card onto it. Now, I think we've talked before about the flaw with the magnetic strip as well, and hopefully in the near future we'll be starting to get away from the magnetic strip and doing more smart cards. So this kind of fraud is more difficult to do.
Well, also I think the target breach is kind of pushing them towards that as a potential solution too. So we'll see if that actually happens. But yes, that's one thing. Obviously, I wouldn't expect most car washes with any kind of technology in them are likely to have a significant IT department or IT support. A good number of the car washes, at least around here, seem to be shoestring operations. So they're barely scraping by, I think, in some cases. So I don't know. There's probably some successful ones, but some of the ones around here where you do most of the work yourself, they don't seem to be high dollar operations. But I guess if you steal their credit cards, maybe they are. But from I don't know. I'm not in the car wash business, so I don't really know how well they do.
Well, yeah, I've seen it in pretty much every article I've read about it. They're nicknaming it card washing, because they basically take a card from the car wash and then they kind of clean it and replace the magnetic data on the magnetic strip, so they're calling it a card wash.
Well, that might also tie into the money laundering analogy as well.
Well, I suppose it ties into both, the fact that it's a car wash and money laundering at the same time.
Yep.
There you go. Very clever.
Yeah, the fact that these guys got busted, because one guy had a bunch of stab wounds on his legs, it just adds to the comedy, I guess you could call it, of the whole story.
Yeah, and you also got to think, I mean, I mentioned it before we started, but I'll say it again. I mean, at what point do you look at a business uh, like this and say, well, maybe they, they deserved what they got? I mean, the people who had their credit card data stolen didn't necessarily deserve what they got, but what about the business itself? I mean, how bad off do you have to be before you really start looking at security? I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing to say. I really don't. So, I mean, how exposed do you have to do you have to make yourself before people are like, well, I don't really feel sorry for you for what happened. So,
Well, yeah, and I think that's the attitude of most security professionals who've been preaching and preaching, hey, you got to do this, you got to at least do that, and then to see an organization or a business like this get hammered, you're just like, yeah, guys, you never listen, you should have, you would have been better off, but that happens a lot too. And again, the part of it could go back to the vendor of the POS system as well, not checking in on its customers and saying, that software you got's pretty old, we can send you an update. I don't know. Depends on if it's a shoestring operation, maybe their vendors are also shoestring operators too, and so they may not be exactly actively involved in making sure their customers are up to date and secure as well.
Did the POS vendor, I can't recall, did they suggest they use PC Anywhere? I know what their solution after the fact was, but I don't know if they originally recommended PC Anywhere or if it stated that in the article.
It just says they were running older versions. It didn't indicate if that was like standard software that they needed to have.
Yeah. Okay.
It might have been for remote support or something like that. So I don't know.
According to the article, they were using the point of sale system developed by MicroLogic Associates, and which had the PC Anywhere enabled, and the credentials were created by MicroLogic. So the company that essentially installed or made the software put the PC Anywhere on there and created the credentials, which were apparently the default credentials for the system at the time that it was created in 2002, I think.
That sounds to me like that was put there for remote support. So if they had an issue, a technician could log in remotely and make corrections to their POS system. That's what it sounds like it was used for.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me, because it was the same credentials on all of them. I'm guessing they had set that up so that they could assist them, which means they probably could have also updated the software for them as well.
Yes, they probably could have. That might be an add-on cost.
So
that raises an interesting question. Would the POS system company or POS vendor be the one responsible for updating that piece of software if they're the one installing it in support of their software?
Well, you gotta read the contract, right? Sometimes the support agreements define exactly what that means, and sometimes they don't. So you kind of have to review your contract, I guess, and see if you've gotten support that allows them to update your software, keep you up to date, or is that a continual, maintenance fee that you have to pay every year? People may have just installed it, paid maintenance for the first 3 years, and said, "I'm done. Don't need it anymore. We're good."
Well, I think the problem. One problem I think is that back in 2002, I don't think security was quite on the top of people's list as far as this stuff goes. And if you're a company and you buy something like this, and who knows how much it costs, you plug it in, you use it, and you forget it, and you don't really think about it. And companies, I'm sure a car wash has less than a dozen employees, and they probably don't have anyone who really is knowledgeable of IT. So they're kind of relying on this company and the product they bought back in 2002 to do what it's doing, and as long as it's working for them, then they're not gonna. They think it's fine.
Yep.
And
it's often the case.
So back to my original, should you say, well, it's kind of your fault type thing? I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I'm an IT person, so I understand this sort of stuff. But if you talk to somebody who is a mechanic and works on cars all the time, and they don't deal with computers, then they might not know. They might say what? I mean,
Sure.
typically when you buy products, you just expect them to work until they essentially die or whatever. So, and that's the case with cars. You don't update your car all the time or whatever. You buy it, you drive it, and when it's not working anymore, you get a new one.
That's an expensive way to do it. You have mechanics that can fix most problems on cars. So.
Well, when it's
you may not be able to.
When it's irreparable, when it's not working, it's irreparable. So there you go.
Okay, well, I don't know about that.
Or the insurance company says, "Hey, your car's totaled. Get a new one." So
yeah, well, that's a different situation.
Well, yeah, and that's the same for a lot of products that you buy. That basically you buy a microwave. You use it until it dies, and then you get a new one.
Yeah, but that's going to be changing soon with all the smart appliances. As soon as that thing's wired to the network, you might be doing those flash updates to it.
Yeah, but nobody will.
True.
Nobody will. They'll think of a microwave as just a microwave. Even if they plug it into the internet, even if it connects to their Wi-Fi or whatever, they won't think about doing a firmware update. It's a microwave.
That's true.
Well, I guess let's bring this back to the privacy question. Obviously, there's some technical issues at the car wash vendor and the original POS vendor. There's standards that they didn't follow. But what do we do as people with credit cards and we want to go get our car washed? Is this something we really need to worry about?
Well, I don't know. Indiana wasn't on the list, as from what I can tell. That doesn't mean that we don't have to worry about it, and I guess our viewers could be all over the country and the world, in fact. Do they have to worry about it? I mean, I honestly don't lose sleep at night worrying if my credit card's going to get stolen, because I know that even if it does get stolen, that I won't be held liable for any charges that are put on it. So it doesn't keep me awake at night thinking that my credit card might get stolen. And I do check it on a regular basis to see if there's any fraudulent charges on it.
Exactly. I think probably the best way to think about it is your credit card has already been stolen. The question is, anybody done anything with the information?
Well, yeah, you can think of it that way. So.
And the, I guess, luxury of the credit card is all the nice insurance packages on it, which I guess just always proves back to never use your debit card because it doesn't have as convenient insurance policies as the credit card does.
Exactly. The law certainly says that I can only be liable up to a certain amount, and that's not true with debit cards, as you say. So you should use your credit card more.
It actually is true with debit cards.
Well, most of them honor
on credit cards, you're liable for $0. On debit cards, you're liable for up to like $50. So.
Well, but yes, in the law.
But most banks say you're liable for nothing.
Well, the law says it only applies to credit cards and not debit cards. However, most banks apply the same policy to both because they don't want to lose customers.
Okay.
They also use some of the same fraud detection systems for both.
Right. And you can use a debit card as a credit card.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, that's the point. So. Yep. So yeah, I guess we have, in the U.S. at least, we have the law on our side. but there's still a possibility of, having the wrong kind of bank and using your debit card and having them wipe out your account balance.
Right.
So there's still that problem.
Yep, there is that problem. But just be vigilant and look at your credit card statements.
Well, that and check your credit history, because you can do that
as well.
Using basically the way I do it is, I'm not consistent at it, but I should be. Is 3 times a year you can request your credit report from one of the 3 credit reporting agencies. So if you time it out, you can check your credit report 3 times a year, because you can request your credit report from one agency once a year. So you just stagger it and do it 3 times a year, and you can monitor your credit report that way.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to do as well.
Yep.
Especially if you're just about to make some sort of big credit decision or something, buy a house
you should do it consistently, because if there's an error or something bad going on, you'll notice it sooner. So when you go to buy that house, you don't have to get it corrected then. You get it corrected before then.
Right.
Anyway.
Yep. So look at your information and make sure it's correct, I guess, is
exactly
the best thing you can do.
Look for weird stuff.
And just assume your credit card is going to get stolen.
No, assume it has been stolen.
Well, assume it has.
Not that it's going to be.
Okay.
It may get stolen.
Assume that it will be used fraudulently. How about that?
Well, sure, but just assume it's been stolen. It's just whether somebody's acted on that yet.
Right. Okay. Well, do we have anything else? Anything else?
I think we've kicked that one pretty good.
Okay. Well, thank you to Keith and Josh. I'm Preston Wiley, and keep your eyes on privacy.